Looks like we may be having some technical difficulties here. Wait for CG to come back on. But in the meantime, might as well introduce myself. My name is Rob
Oh,
Schuh. CG, you there?
yeah, something happened. It
What's
frozen a little
up?
bit. I was surprised. Like, what the heck? Oh, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rob Schuh. Man, dude, I don't know what happened with the reception. It kind of went weird. Like, I was like, what? It never frozen like this before.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I came in, I jumped in, I started to take over and introduce myself, say what's up to the people.
Yeah, so tell them where they can find you on social media platform, man.
Yeah,
My
for sure.
apology. I guess something happened.
Yeah, no worries. Hey, man, technical difficulties happen and the show must go on. That's what
Go.
happens in this live stream business. You got to roll with the punches sometimes, my friend. Amin the Dream,
Yeah.
I see him popping in there in the chat. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I am over on my YouTube channel, Rob Schuh, same spelling there, Schuh. It looks all complicated, but really it's just the German spelling for shoe. Like when you go over there, Shoe is Schuh. So yeah, my YouTube channel, Rob Schuh, I'm all about 49ers, man. I'm talking 49ers, bringing on guests, giving my own opinions, throwing out some funny stuff every now and then. I like to think that I can make people laugh when I try. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, that's the best way to get a handle of when I'm going to be going live because I make all the announcements on there. My Twitter handle is on the screen there at the left shoe. A little play on words there at the left shoe, Schuh.
Okay, it's interesting, man. Like, I guess that's how you pronounce your name is Schuh because it's like a German word. I guess never knew. I thought it was just more like a different meaning of it, but I guess it does kind of relate to the word shoe. So
It does. And it used to be, I did the, whole genealogy thing back in the 1800s or whenever my relatives left Germany. It used to be Schumacher. So somebody in my family used to make shoes. And that's how you got your last name back in the day was whatever you did for a living. That was what people called you. So shoemaker was what my family used to be into.
okay, that's interesting, man. So looking into the matchup against what went wrong against the Packers, man. Like, can you at least name at least three things that we should have did right to beat the Packers and we didn't capitalize it?
Yeah, it was a tragedy to come out and start as slow as we did. I had said the week prior that you cannot afford to go an entire quarter without getting on the board and allow the Packers and Aaron Rodgers to jump out to an early lead in the same way that we did against Philadelphia, right? We came out against Philly and struggled in the first quarter. And thankfully, Philly was not as talented of a team, and therefore they weren't able to jump all over us. But you knew that was going to be the case with Aaron Rodgers. And so to allow the offense to stagnate right out of the gate and really not do anything to make that spark happen, not bring in many Trey Lance packages, right? That really disturbed me. And the other thing that I noticed right out of the gate was an immediate jump to tricks for the run game, an immediate jump to, hey, let's get Juice the ball, let's get Kittle the ball in creative ways in space. And I appreciate that. But what I thought we got away from was the vanilla play calling, the bread and butter of the run game, the interior rushes. I thought that we didn't give Trey Sermon enough chances to be successful on Sunday. I'm still looking to see what the rookie can do. You take a guy in the third round and you expect him to produce at a certain level, and we just didn't have the patience for it on Sunday. So I found that to be very disappointing. What were your
Yeah,
observations of the game?
it was disappointing that we weren't able to run the ball as much, and then we had to mix up plays with Juszczyk and Kittle, and then Samuel. It's like, come on, man! Like, why did we even draft this guy so high? Don't get me wrong, I like the kid that was coming out of Ohio State when he was originally from Oklahoma, but I like the style of play. But I really thought he didn't really fit much of our offense when it comes to the type of run plays we're doing. He's more of a guy that would be more of a physical type back, kind of like a Carlos Hyde.
Right,
Like we just
between the
got rid of like
tackles.
yeah, that's what he is. He's not going to be like what Elijah Mitchell is. Elijah Mitchell fits perfect when it comes to his speed and skill set. And I can understand why he got ahead of the depth chart because of the fact he's the kind of player that Shanahan would have in his running back package. But you look at Trey Sermon, didn't we have somebody exactly the same way? But I would have thought maybe he would have been a really good running back if we would have just used him the right way. But it seems to me they're losing. They don't seem as confident about this guy. And I don't understand. Like, got to give this kid more carries.
It's wild, and it didn't come through in the preseason, right? He was the second back off the bench throughout the preseason. There was no precursor to this. There was no foreshadowing by the 49ers. All of a sudden, going into week one, we were all just left up in arms. I mean, I know from a fantasy football perspective, there were a lot of cats out there that were drafting Sermon above Mostert, right? I mean, people were excited to see what Sermon could do within this offense. And I do wonder, to your point of what Sermon is good at, if it was really intended to be more of a package deal, right? You had Aaron Banks drafted in the second round that felt like a bruising sort of interior lineman who would really be able to push guys around on the rush game. Trey Lance, another threat in the run game and less of a speed guy, right? He's not a Lamar Jackson when it comes to elusiveness, but he's a physical runner. He's a guy that can actually do some power runs in between the tackles and get some yardage that way. So I do wonder if we've just yet to see it, and that could be the case. But to this point, regardless of why we haven't seen it, we haven't seen it, and it's frustrating as a Niners fan because we're seeing this offense struggle, and you have to wonder if there isn't something that they could be doing with several of their early round draft picks this year. This team just doesn't strike me as being good enough to win without getting some production from their early round draft picks.
Yeah, that's where I'm looking at. Like Ivory Thomas not quite performing. Then you got Diamond Lenore, who's actually playing a little bit better than him. And it's like, what is it with these early round picks? It's like we're not even giving them a chance to play, or they're just not really ahead of the depth chart. It's like Aaron Banks. At first, it was head scratching to pick this guy, and I would have been okay to stay at the other spot and got Asante Samuel. But
Yes.
no, we trade down, get a guy that was a reach. You could have got him in the third or fourth round. But to make a good argument out of it, then you get a guy in the fifth round that plays swing tackle and could be the answer at the guard position, which you got Jalen Moore.
Right.
It's kind of like this guy can play your tackle and play your guard, and he's more viable than Aaron Banks, so I can see why he's even getting more playing time at this point. But Aaron Banks, man, that was just a disappointment pick.
Yeah, I had the 49ers. I predicted that the 49ers would draft interior line before they addressed the cornerback position. And theoretically, I stand by my prediction of that being the right way in which the 49ers should have focused on building the team. Now, hindsight is 2020. Clearly, they should have picked Asante Samuel over Aaron Banks at this point in time. You never know how it's going to play out down the line. Aaron Banks it could all come together. He's shifting from left guard to right guard. Certainly, that's not an easy thing to do within the NFL, but it's concerning that we're not seeing any of him. And Brunskill is struggling. So it's not as if Daniel Brunskill is playing at the top of his game and therefore holding the rookie out from getting in there. Brunskill has looked kind of poor through this point in the season, and yet we're still not giving any reps to the rookie. That to me is the level of concern. It does at this point. It's too early to predict it, but to this point, it's been a bit of a miss.
Yeah. So it's been like a miss because of the fact they're not getting opportunities. Like if you draft these guys as high as they are, they got to have some opportunities. I mean, it's wasted a draft pick just for the fact you're not playing this guy. Trey Sermon should at least get a lot of good amount of opportunities too, even though Elijah Mitchell is very good too. But you still want to get Trey Sermon involved in some ways. Like if you look at the way how the Broncos did it, then they drafted Royce Freeman also, but then they were still able to utilize him in some ways.
Yeah, you saw a mix between he and Philip Lindsay, it was at the time, right?
Yeah, it was kind of like even though he was a top pick, they still were able to utilize him a little more than
Yep.
expected. You know,
And it was a good mix and match of skill sets. And I feel that's the same with Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon. They seem to be complementary playing styles. And Trey Sermon may not have that top end speed, but he has short area quickness. He should have what's needed to be successful between the tackles in this offense. And he may not have the home run hitting speed, but that doesn't matter if you're getting the chunk plays, if you're getting the solid yards per carry when you're, successfully setting up the run. And because we've been unwilling to really commit to it, it's created an imbalanced offense to this point. And in the beginnings of games, it has really cost us. And I think that we're set up for another game where if we come out in the way that we did against the Packers, we're really going to struggle.
Yeah, especially with the way Seattle's been playing. They're hungry, they're desperate, and if we play like what we did, it's gonna be a disaster like the same situation. It's like a dangerous team like Seattle. They are coming off a 2-game losing streak. They're desperate, they're hungry. They're looking to
Mm-hmm.
bounce back. And what's a better way to bounce back by playing against one of your division rivals? I mean, it's got to be one of those kind of games. I know that Russell Wilson has never lost 3 straight games, and I know Jimmy Garoppolo has yet to lose a consecutive game. So something's got to give between one of those two teams.
Something does have to give in between those two records and in between the idea that Seattle has really struggled on defense, can't get off the field. I was looking this up earlier, but through 3 games, Seattle's given up 84 first downs, worst in the league, averaging 28 first downs per game. To give you a perspective on just how bad that is, on offense, the best team in the league as far as getting first downs is Dallas, and they're averaging 27 first downs in a game. So Seattle's defense is worse at allowing 28 first downs per game than the best offense in the league to this point in Dallas in getting 27 first downs per game. So they just can't get off the field. They're giving up 4.5 yards per carry, which isn't terrible, but allowing an average of 150 yards per game during the game. So it really sets up for the 49ers to take advantage, but something has to give. Either the Seahawks defense will flip it around and really turn it on this game and improve their statistics, or the 49ers will finally get the start that we're looking for and be productive and take advantage of this Seattle defense that seems to be highly suspect at this point.
Yeah, especially how they're ranked as defensively, and they're not really as good as when it comes to the statistics rankings and all the way they've been playing. Like they haven't really capitalized a lot of turnovers. The sacks are not showing up out there. So when you look at Seattle, you're thinking like the first 3 games, it's been time of possession that's been hurting them a lot. And they haven't been able to capitalize some turnovers as much as people would expect them. Because usually when Seattle, like the previous Seattle's teams we've been like knowing about, it was even though their defense wasn't as great as it used to be, they were still able to capitalize some turnovers and
Yes.
make some. I mean, even though like they say bend don't break type of defense, but you don't see it. Like the first game against the well, they were playing the Colts, which is Carson Wentz, which we all know Seattle knows how to play good against Carson Wentz. But to make a fair argument, the Colts were going through the new regime with Carson Wentz and Frank Wright. So usually it takes time for this team to customize, but I think they're going on a bad start right now. But then when you look at teams like Tennessee, they were coming off an embarrassing loss against the Cardinals. They woke up, they came to play at Seattle, they came to run it down their throats, and then you see them play against Minnesota, who came up very, very close against the Cardinals, and they came and played Seattle really good. So I'm just thinking maybe this Green Bay loss can be a wake up call to where we come and show up at home and come up with a W, hopefully. But it wouldn't surprise me because Seattle seems to always have our number, so it's always been that other way around.
They have. And I agree with you that you would think this is the wake up call that the 49ers need. The quote from Kyle Shanahan before the Green Bay game made the loss a little bit more embarrassing when he came out and apparently to the locker room at some point said, like, we're expected to win this game because we are the physically more gifted team. We should be able to physically dominate the opponent on Sunday Night Football underneath the lights. And then lo and behold, Green Bay comes out. And if you want to describe that game, especially on the 49ers offensive side of the ball, Kenny Clark wrecked that game. Wrecked that game. I mean, crushed the middle of our line. Just the interior pressure was in Jimmy's face, in Sermon's face. It was from the get clear that Green Bay heard the message from Kyle Shanahan and responded. and put forth a very physical game themselves. And I think it did catch the 49ers off guard.
Yeah, it did. Because who would have thought so? Who would have thought that way? You know, you would have think that we would have been able to play good against Green Bay, but Green Bay just came with a different urgency. They came out to play, and I didn't expect it that way. But what's even more disappointing was we gave up 17 points before halftime. And when you give up those kind of points, it's kind of hard to overcome. And even though we did come back, it was just too late.
Yeah, too little, too late. I got to take a second to say what's up to Gavin. I see him in the comments there talking about the brick. I am one of those suckers that bought one of the bricks for Levi's Stadium. It's not here in front of me, so it's not convenient to grab, but I do have a little a brick that's there in Levi's Stadium, and I've got the souvenir one here at home. So shout out to Gavin for bringing that up. Yeah, I mean, I thought that for sure, if the Packers were in it at the end of the game, I thought that Aaron Rodgers was going to be able to take them down the field and beat us on a last-second drive, just like he did. I had no faith, given what we saw in the first 2 weeks, that the 49ers defense was going to be able to make a critical stop if it came down to just one stop. I thought that the matchup favored the 49ers. I predicted that we would win by more than one score. Boy, was I wrong about that. We came out of the gate slowly. The Packers jumped all over it, and then we just didn't have enough in the tank to get it done. But I will say that I have to attribute more of the blame for that on the 49ers defense. When you take the lead with 37 seconds remaining, as a quarterback, as an offensive play caller, you have done your job at that point. At that point, you should win that game, regardless of who you're going up against. Your defense needs to be able to make a stop when there are 37 seconds left on the clock. And unfortunately, we just weren't. And I fear that if similar circumstances are set up again this Sunday, Russell Wilson is the king of the fourth quarter. That man has no fear in driving down the field and winning the game for Seattle. So I sure hope that the 49ers offense comes out of the gate firing a bit quicker this game, because I don't want to see the same result against Russell Wilson.
Yeah, because Russell Wilson's not too far off with Aaron Rodgers when it comes to the fourth quarters and all this stuff. So the one thing you got to do is contain this guy. And he's going to run. He's going to extend plays. He's going to do whatever he can to get the team on the board to win. So it's like, you may think you get this guy. You may think you got him. But in some ways, he can escape a little here and there. And he can really make some miracles out of anything. So it's like, my only concern is if we play good in the first half, I think that's where Seattle really folds second half. And then we got to keep it going. Because Seattle, for some reason, they look good in the first half for some reason. But then, like, I guess from a guy that I went to a stream up NordCamp, he even said something about how Seattle's team doesn't show up in the second half. It's like they stay in the locker room. So I don't know what to believe, but he tells me that's the issue with Seattle. So I just think that if we play good first half and keep on going like the way we've been doing in the second half, I think we have a chance to at least come up with a good dominant fashion, but it's going to be a really tough game.
It is going to be a really tough game. And it is interesting to note that this year, which is unique for the Seahawks, that they really are struggling in the second half of games. I mean, when you look it up, Russell Wilson is Mr. Fourth Quarter. I pulled these stats earlier this morning, and I'll throw them out here because they're relevant to what we're facing in the fourth quarter, even though it's not what we're seeing from Seattle this year. It's what we've seen from Russell Wilson over his career. He is tied for the fourth most quarterback comebacks, 21, and game-winning drives, 27, since he entered the league in 2012, including the postseason. He has the highest fourth-quarter passer rating in the league since they started tracking that stat in 1991, with a minimum of 500 throwing attempts. The Seahawks themselves are plus 269 points in the point differential in the fourth quarter since 2012. And he has the second highest career passer rating in NFL history, behind only, You guessed it, Aaron Rodgers, who came away and beat us at the end of the last game. So while they are struggling in the second half so far this season, it's a small sample size. We're only talking about 3 games. And historically speaking, Russell Wilson and the Seahawks are money in the fourth quarter. So I do think the 49ers have to be prepared for the eventual reality that at some point this season, you would think the Seahawks wake up and start coming out at the half and actually playing the same way in the second half that they do the first. I just hope that it isn't this weekend that they wake up against the 49ers defense.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for too, because if we can capitalize on Seattle at this point, because they're at a point where they're very weak and it's hard to underestimate them. You never want to sleep on them, but still, there's a lot of part of their weakness that you can really expose on, like especially their secondary.
Yes.
If you can protect Jimmy enough time and give Debo time to be open on those big plays, or for some reason if Ayuk is coming into his own again like he did against the Packers, then I think this could be a really interesting matchup. It could either go as a shootout or it can either go as a surprising fashion that some people would say, how the heck did the Niners even come away with this type of fashion? You know, it's like one of the other. It could be a close game. So
It could. I
if
mean,
we play like
the 49ers
but if
have a
we
lot
play,
of weapons there, but if George Kittle is out, that really does hurt. That takes away one of the biggest weapons, one of the biggest threats, and one of the biggest contributors in blocking for the run game. So that is something I'm going to be keeping a close eye on personally.
yeah, I guess he's been listed on the injury report, so I'm like hoping that it's just fit. I mean, I guess Shanahan says there's a chance he will miss, but it's like, come on, you can't catch a break. This is
Right?
the most important game of the season, to where it determines our fate whether we have a chance to bounce back. I mean, usually when you lose to teams like Green Bay, it kind of builds your confidence for the next game. But for Seattle, they're coming off a 2-game losing streak and they're really hungry and they're really trying to get back on track. And we're the team that's just coming off a hard fought defeat. So it's like, which one's going to show up?
Yeah, you've got to be able to take advantage of the early season matchups when they favor you if you plan to be a playoff slash Super Bowl caliber team. And right now, Seattle is struggling, and that's exactly what the 49ers offense needs. They need a get right game. The question is whether they'll actually get it. And you have to, if you consider yourself to be a contender, when the matchups favor you. And that's why it's concerning to me, is that that's how I felt about the Green Bay game. I felt that the matchups favored San Francisco, that we were going to be able to come out and physically dominate that game, as Kyle Shanahan expressed that he expected the 49ers to be able to do. And the concerning factor was the inability to do it. And more so for me was the seeming lack of confidence that Kyle Shanahan showed in our run game to run the more traditional through the A gaps type run scheme. You saw a lot of creativity. You saw him go into his bag, and it didn't necessarily work. The Packers were all over it. They were lining up 5 guys on the line of scrimmage. They were crashing down in the middle, collapsing the center of the defense, and it was a physically dominating game from the Packers' interior defensive line, in particular Kenny Clark. But you've got to be able to take advantage of those matchups. San Francisco didn't last week, and it's interesting to wonder if they will against Seattle, because if you drop this game and then have to head down to Arizona to play that one, man, things get tight real quick. This division, I believe, is going to be decided by a game or 2 at the end of the season. So these division games are going to be critical for the 49ers if they expect to make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to be very critical because Seattle's going to be a team that we got to match up on the first division game of the season. And then we got the Cardinals, which is going to be a lot tougher than what people expect it to be. So I know coming off a loss, people would assume Jimmy should be able to bounce back. We'll see how he responds this week. I mean, you would assume he should be able to, but then Russell Wilson's coming off a slump with this team, so it's like it's going to be a lot tougher down the stretch. I expect Seattle to at least play a really good game. I just don't see us doing what some people would expect us to do. I wouldn't expect us to dominate them. I would expect at least Seattle giving us a fight in some ways, but give us a like to where it can give us a bounce back game. the way I look at it. Because Seattle, if they keep playing like they're playing, I believe there's a chance we can come away with just a field goal. Just the way I look at it. But
So you mean that the offense would only put up a field goal? You think that we would struggle?
no, I'm just saying like we would come away with winning by a field goal. Like
Yeah. So it'll be a close game. That's, yeah, I could see that as well. My fear is if it's close in the fourth quarter, that there's going to be no stopping Russell Wilson. I like Gavin's question there, which is the tougher game for the 49ers. I personally see it as the Arizona matchup. I think that the 49ers have to be very cautious and not overlook Seattle. Absolutely have to come with everything you've got against Seattle because guaranteed they're going to bring it. And you can't drop the first game at home to Seattle and then have to try and win the one when you're up there at their stadium against that crowd noise. Even though I'll be there because I'm a Pacific Northwesterner, I just don't have faith that we can consistently win in that stadium. Very difficult stadium to win in. So you have to knock off Seattle and then worry about Arizona next. But to me, Arizona's the tougher matchup. More talented team, not quite as talented of a coaching staff for sure, but more talented team top to bottom.
yeah, and that's the interesting fact. So looking at what Gavin says, Jimmy G has never lost back-to-back games, and Russell has never lost the opening 3 games of the season. So that's a tough one. So this is why we cannot ill afford to. We gotta take advantage of their weak spots because if we don't, Seattle might just come away with a surprising fashion like they always tend to do.
Yes.
So I'm just saying that we like if we play like we're playing, it can just come down to a field goal because like it just takes one team to at least capitalize one possession. So even if they come away with a field goal, it's kind of like a hard fought victory. If you look at it this way, if Seattle just gets on a groove and we cannot stop them for some reason, it can be one of those type of long days. Like
Yes.
especially when they run the ball with Chris Carson. Chris Carson might be the most critical player that we need to focus on mostly because he's gonna move the chains a little bit for Seattle and they're gonna run the ball. And this was what creates their play action a little more. So that's gonna be the one guy we need to focus on stopping is Chris Carson.
Yes. Thankfully, I feel like he's the type of back that the 49ers generally match up a little bit better against because he is that bigger, more physical style of running back. And that seems to be a better matchup as opposed to the faster guys. I think that the next week against Arizona, where you have Edmonds, I think he's actually a bigger threat because he tends to break off bigger runs against the 49ers. I think you'll see smaller chunk plays from Carson and the Seahawks this weekend, but I'd be surprised if the 49ers don't contain him to somewhere around the league average of 4.5 yards a carry. I don't think you'll see a statistical breakout game from Chris Carson this week. And part of that is because the 49ers will probably key in on him and try to eliminate that phase of the game because they're not going to be able to stop the passing game in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, that's going to be the tougher one. Like especially with Metcalf, he's going to be a big threat receiver. Then you got Lockett, who can really do a lot. He can separate. He can really make the big plays happen. So it's like the only question is they got this tight end. So I don't know much about him, but I'm hearing about how he's like really coming into his own. So they got this Will Disley guy, and I guess Gerald Everett was supposedly on the COVID list. So that
Oh,
might be the
interesting. He may
yeah.
not be going this weekend, huh?
From what I'm hearing, yeah, doesn't seem like he's going to play this week. From what
Yeah,
somebody told me.
Disley seems to be great in space. He seems to be able to find the holes in the zone and just sit down. And Russell Wilson is the master at getting him the ball. So, as far as possessions, he seems like a very big weapon for the Seahawks in that way. He's not the big play guy, but that doesn't matter. They have that in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett anyway. So you have that then possession receiver, sort of like a Jason Witten for the Cowboys back in the day.
Yeah, that's what it seems like because he's not that fast, but he seems like the kind of guy that will get the job done. But he's just never been able to stay healthy for a full season. So the guy's got. I mean, I can see why Seattle really liked this guy from
Yes.
Washington. So we got to wait and see how he does. I mean, can he stay healthy? That's the question. Here's a question by one of your fans. Moses says, Rob, love our Twitter battles, but what's your thoughts on my theory if it happens? Kirkpatrick will match up versus Metcalf fairly.
I like that prediction. I mean, so Moses has schooled me several times on my cornerback evaluations, which I'll admit, I am no Eric Crocker, right? If you look at Eric Crocker and his breakdown of cornerbacks, just phenomenal. But I appreciate Moses coming in and educating me on the topic whenever I need a little correcting. I would be thrilled to think of Metcalf versus Kirkpatrick being a favorable matchup for us. I struggle to see it. I mean, Kirkpatrick had a up and down year last year. Was available on the street. That's always a bad sign when somebody's out there during the start of the season and hasn't found a home. But you never know if it's a scheme fit. And Moses, to his credit, obviously studies the cornerback position, and so I think that it's fair to wonder if he's got an inside track on that. It'll be interesting to actually see it play out, because that's my fear, is that we have no answer on the outside. That if the pass rush is unable to get home on Russell Wilson, if Nick Bosa isn't able to drag him down, if Eric Armstead isn't all over him, if DJ Jones doesn't flatten Wilson once or twice, my fear is that they eat us alive on the outside. I mean, those are two wildly talented wide receivers, and the 49ers' depth at the position is decimated. So it's hard to imagine that being a favorable matchup for the 49ers, but I hope Moses is right.
Well, it depends on Norman if he can play this week. So I think it's kind of 50-50 with him. So then you look at the guy who's going to play the nickel spot, which is very important. So I'm hearing that even though we did sign Buster Screams, I don't even know if he's going to be suited to play this week. So it can either be Diamante Lenore playing that spot. So one or the
Yeah,
other.
that one doesn't concern me quite as much, because it feels like Lenore has had a great start to the season, and he was familiar and comfortable in the nickel role. I do think the Buster Skrine thing is a depth sign. It gives us that flexibility that if another injury does happen, knock on wood, hopefully it does not, but it gives us the flexibility to flex Lenore back out to the outside, put Skrine on the nickel. It gives us a couple of chess pieces that can be moved around in case things go badly again. But it would be confusing if you saw him out there starting over Lenore. It would seem that you would have E-Man on one side, Kirkpatrick on the other, and Lenore at the slot. That to me breaks out as the most likely starting lineup given the injury to Josh Norman. Hey man, credit to Josh Norman. Guy's spitting up blood last weekend, and he's trying to play on Sunday. So I gotta say, hats off, man. Hats off to Josh Norman for even trying to give it a go.
Yeah, he's. I think he just wants to keep his starting spot because he knows that if he's out, oh, he's losing his starting spot right there. Because it could be Kirkpatrick's next time to step in. If Kirkpatrick steps in, they might just think about it and say, let's just play Kirkpatrick.
Yeah.
I think Norman knows that it's not going to be for long if he stays injured, because usually with the players who are injured the longest, sometimes another player performs better and then they just stick with that guy unless they like what they see out of Norman, which Norman did pretty good his first game against the Eagles. So he kind of shown some good savvy veteran presence and really good instincts. That's one thing you like about Norman.
That's what I saw too, was the veteran presence, the didn't get rattled, had a couple of plays, ticky-tack foul calls too, right? Those first two PI calls, the second one in the end zone where he hooked him on the left side, that was a valid PI call, but the first one was garbage. I mean, that was just ticky-tack, and it seemed that the refs were calling those types of ticky-tack plays all game. So kudos to them for being consistent, but in any other game, I think that Norman is getting away with that first one, and the second one was a touchdown-saving move. So a veteran player move. So I was pleased with what I saw. You never know as the game goes on, and you never know against a more physically capable wide receiver. So it would be an interesting matchup to see him across from DK Metcalf. Unfortunately, it looks like we may not get to see that. And therefore, that's the most interesting position battle to watch in my mind, is can the 49ers actually get off the field on defense, or are they consistently giving up touchdown after touchdown after touchdown and setting up Mr. Clutch in the fourth quarter to have the game-winning drive at some point?
Yeah, that's the question we gotta figure out by this week. So here's one thing that Gavin said: should we move Armstead to inside? I think that's where he plays better at. I don't know why they keep putting him at the edge. It's just I don't get it. Like they should just let the other guys play in that spot.
Yeah, it seems to me as if they like his length on the edge in those early down situations. And quite honestly, the production, the stats jump off the page from the interior. I think that I'm comfortable with the early down setup and then the rotation to shifting him inside and bringing in those turbo packages. I love the look when Samson Ebukam is on there with D Ford and Nick Bosa. That is amazing to me. It hasn't produced as much as you would like to see at this point in the season, but I think the potential is there. I do think the light comes on more and more for Samson Ebukam each week. And although we haven't seen the production from him that I think some of us, myself included, hoped to see when we learned of the signing in the offseason, I do still have faith that that's going to come together and that the rotation and the fresh legs coming in on the defensive line, I believe it will start to bear fruit. And hopefully it's against Seattle because God knows that Russell Wilson can roll out onto the edges and really make us pay and has done it consistently over the years.
Yeah, because he's really like he's elusive when it comes to escaping from the pocket. So that's going to be the tough task. But I think when it comes down to getting Russell Wilson, like, can we really sack the guy at this point? Because I know he's been sacked so many times, even when he's trying to escape from the pocket. Like, you got guys like Ebicum who's got the speed to slow him down. You got somebody like Arden Key who's been more good against mobile quarterbacks when you put him in the rotation. D Ford, he's proven to be really good, but I think they're just being smart on them and try to give him pitch counts or something like that. So then you got Nick Bosa, who really needs to work on. He's good at what he does, but he needs to work on being disciplined and focus on the mobile quarterback too. Sometimes they can be tricky. That's the one thing about Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa's got the good technician movements and all the stuff, but he's got to be more well disciplined to watch that mobile quarterback because that's the one part he has to work on a lot.
Yeah, we cannot have the over pursuit. D Ford has over pursued quarterbacks considerably this season. And I think that led to the stat that made its way onto 49ers Twitter that hopefully most of the viewers have seen that measures how far each defender, each defensive lineman is from the quarterback at the point when the ball is released. And D Ford's like 6 yards away from the quarterback when the ball's coming out. It's further than any of the other defensive linemen. And I think that comes from over pursuit. He's a speed guy. And so he's rushing upfield. And if the offensive lineman is able to successfully reroute him, he then overruns the play significantly and is out of the picture. Against a mobile quarterback like Russell Wilson, who is both mobile and extremely heady, that he will make you pay like nobody's business. You over pursue Russell Wilson and open up the outside, forget about it. He is either going to make you pay by lobbing a beautiful rainbow ball up to Tyler Lockett, or he's escaping around the edge for a 15 to 20-yard scamper.
Yeah, that's one thing about Russell Wilson. He can really make you pay, and you don't want to blitz on mobile quarterbacks because they can. All they gotta do is escape and run off for free yards or something because you're opening the lanes a little bit. So that's the problem. But here's one thing about what Moses said. Rob, what's the word on Devontae Harris? I thought he would be active this Sunday.
I thought so too. I'll admit, Moses, that I thought this was more of a chess move at the beginning of the season of basically hiding one more player on the depth chart through this new system of IR that allows people to come back. I feel like the 49ers have done a good job, as have most teams in the league, at spending a little bit of extra money, but keeping players that otherwise in other seasons they either would have cut or put on long-term IR, never to come back. The 49ers have hidden a couple of players that basically gives you the reserves to come back at a later point. But personally, and Moses, I'll count on you to do the cornerback evaluation. It seemed as if Devontae Harris was a lower tier individual. I didn't see anything from him that made me think to myself, oh, I can't wait until we get him back on the roster because that's really going to shore up the protection issues that we're having on the outside. That said, the injuries at that position group have been so atrocious that we'll take any depth we can get there. So getting anybody back who's familiar with this system, who wasn't just signed last week off of his couch, is a good thing. I too expected him to be able to go this weekend. I know that they opened up the window for him to practice, but I haven't heard anything about whether he's going to be out there this weekend. As far as I'm aware, it looks like he probably won't be.
Yeah, same can be said with Maurice Hurst Jr. too. So they opened the practice window for him. So I think against the Cardinals, this would be a much needed time to get him. So Seattle, yeah, there it's a good way to get him also, but I think he's not fully ready to play this week. So I think you need some of those players for the Cardinals matchup. Yeah, I have high hopes on Harris, but I love his technique and his very explosive attacking the ball. We're gonna need Ebicom to step in against Russell Wilson. I think his speed and his the way he plays, I think that would be the matchup that we need to be able to slow down Russell Wilson. Is maybe on some package plays we can have him spy Russell Wilson and make sure he doesn't run or something like that. Because usually when you get somebody like him, all you gotta do is just spy and contain him, and it's I mean, even though he's kind of moving to as an edge rusher, but the best thing that he's done when he was with the Rams, he was able to spy the mobile quarterbacks. He was
Yeah,
able to slow them down.
he had two good games against Russell Wilson last year, if I'm remembering correctly. I think you're right that that's a key for the 49ers defense, that speed and ability to keep Russell Wilson in the pocket. And I agree that it is all about setting the edge and containment. Easier said than done for containing Russell Wilson, no doubt. History shows that the man gets it done. But I think the 49ers know what the plan of attack needs to be. It's just a question of executing.
Yeah, it's all about executing and making the plays happen. And as long as we can just maintain the possession longer and have a good score, like a big time score, then it's going to make it hard for Russell to come from behind. So it's like the one thing that I feel like we have a chance of winning this matchup is if we can really play good in the first half and then keep going on the second half. I think this would be a lot hard for Seattle to overcome because I got to see how Seattle shows up in the second half because if I'm correctly, they only had 23 minutes of time of possession on the ball, and that's not good. That's ranked
No.
terrible, and especially on third downs, their third down defense is worse. Our third down defense is like I guess it's 50% or something like that
Right.
to a certain extent.
Yeah, their defense is atrocious. Of those 84 first downs that they've given up through those 3 games, 50 of them were given up passing. So 50 out of 84 times a team was able to complete that third down pass for a first, and 8 of them on penalties. So they're making plenty of key errors. I mean, 8 first downs on penalties, shooting themselves in the foot. That's a pretty rare thing for a well-coached team, a Pete Carroll coached team. You would think that they will get that together. Levi's Stadium is not the type of stadium that I think of as being extremely loud. It's been better in recent years, but it's a pretty vanilla stadium that doesn't have the blocking in of the noise like Seattle. So I don't anticipate the stadium causing a lot of these penalties for Seattle. I think they'll have a fairly clean game, well coached. It'll be a question of executing. It'll be, can the 49ers on early downs pick up the chunks of rushing yardage? Will they be able to average that 4.5 yards per carry that Seattle has given up to this point in the season? And if so, that'll set up Jimmy G on third down to be able to complete a lot of those balls. And I believe that Jimmy G has been pretty money on third down so far in this season when you look at it holistically. So again, one of those things has to change on Sunday. Either the 49ers will struggle against this Seattle defense, or the Seattle defense will open it up and allow Jimmy to have the game that we hope he will.
It's one or the other. It's
Yep.
either because first half we tend to struggle, so that's kind of like a expected part. But I want to see some improvement in the first half. I
Have
know in the
to.
second half I want to see a lot better from the Niners team in general. But the question is are we going to be able to close it in the fourth quarter? Because the Packers game it was in our hands, and then 37 seconds later it just slipped on our hands. So it's like we know that Seattle's going to be a good team. We expect them to play their best football. We expect a very tough matchup. I expect Seattle's defense to step up a little bit this time around because I
Agreed.
know they've been kind of frustrated with this type of loss for two straight games. I expect Russell Wilson to have some urgency. I expect him to at least start getting this offense on track. But the only problem is, can we really stop him? So that's the one question I hope that we can answer during this week. So
Is
it's
it?
like, okay, so here's another question. Do you
Yeah, go ahead.
see another do you see another big game from special teams this week?
It's set up to have a good game. I mean, Mitch Wishnowsky is punting the hell out of the ball. NFC Special Teams Player of the Month now. I mean, he really is pinning it inside the 20. Even the one against Green Bay that rolled into the end zone did bounce at the 1. There was a chance of downing that inside the 5. And then Trenton Cannon sure looks like he can get shot out of a cannon sometimes. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the return in general. I think it's gotten to the point where I'd prefer to take the ball at the 25 than watching one of those returns. But when you have an electric returner with speed like Cannon, you saw what can happen. And it could be worth it for those several times that we start within the 25 because he catches it at the 5 on sort of a pooch kick and he can only get it out to the 20 is offset by any of those longer runs. I do wonder, if we'll see Robbie Gould money from long distances this year when it plays out. He has seemed to struggle with his accuracy on kicks over 50 yards. We really haven't been tested there as of yet. I would think that the 49ers can excel on special teams this weekend. And I'm of the Jim Harbaugh theory that if you win 2 phases of the game, that's critical towards getting the victory. You don't have to dominate on 3 sides of the ball on all 3 phases. You can win on defense and special teams, even if your offense is struggling. So I do think it's an ace up the 49ers sleeve.
Yeah, it's definitely got to be an ace on their sleeve. So Robbie G to blaze it to be consistent. Well, Robbie Gold just has to really kick consistently. Like even when we're in position to kick some 50+ yarder, at least he can make the field goals and be consistent to where it extends our lead or it gives us a chance to be a lot closer. Then I think that's what the Robbie Gold would need to see out there. It's like if we can really get Trenton Cannon on a roll like he did against the Packers, if we can get a solid return game and offense starts to click in here and there, then we're in business. But as far as like score prediction, it's kind of 50-50 because there's two tails ends of the stories of these two teams. One is good in the first half, the other one is better in the second half. Which one's going to show up? One can only just have the ball for 23 minutes of the clock. So the other one seems to average a little bit better. So it's like, which one's going to play better?
Yeah, when I look at it, it was tempting for me to overreact to the first 3 games of the season. I did a lot of research on the 49ers and had a gut feeling on how this season was going to play out. And obviously you change that after new information comes in. So after each week, you take in that new information, you take in your observations of the team, and you then alter what it is you're predicting going forward. I thought that this was going to be a top 5 defense. That was predicated on having one shutdown corner and a defensive line that dominated games. After losing Verrett, I quickly reassessed this defense being top 5 and predicted it to be more of a top half of the league with potential to still be special, but not dominant like 2019. I think that ship has sailed in my mind. Unless someone steps up incredibly or the defensive line takes a huge leap forward that we haven't seen through 3 games, I've changed my mind on that. But it doesn't change my overall impression of this team as one that's built to compete. I still think that they have 4 of the best people in the league at their particular position. Still believe that Fred Warner is close to, if not the best middle linebacker in the league. Still believe that Trent Williams is the best left tackle in the league. Still believe that as a complete player, when you take into account the blocking, that George Kittle is in the conversation for the best tight end in the league. And while it's an underutilized position, certainly Juice is the best fullback in the league. So they have the talent. It's a question of getting everything put together and looking cohesive. to this point, they haven't done it, but I didn't want to allow the small sample size of 3 games to throw off my impression of this 49ers team as a talented one. So I still expect them to compete for a playoff spot. I still expect them to be competitive against Seattle.
Yeah, I expect it to be a lot closer, like a close game. Do you guys think that Buckner made Bosa look better? Of course. He took a lot of the double teams. He actually made Armstead look good too. But unfortunately, he got traded to the Colts. And Armstead was just having a breakout year. And so we thought, hey, he's taking a little bit cheaper deal than what we were going to give Buckner. So I guess they wanted to go the other route. So I think that a lot did factor into Buckner making this team better because when he was our defensive tackle, he was a dominant force getting to that quarterback, creating pressure. He was able to help our DNs get free up a little here and there. So that's the one factor that's missing about Buckner is the way he plays the game, man. It's not going to be easy to replace. And Kinlaw's just a serviceable run stopper. Like you're not going to get the flashy stats, you know.
No, certainly doesn't look that way at this point in his career. I would say that, yes, as a complete unit, that the 49ers defensive line of 2019 was most definitely a more dominant unit. I don't expect, even once they gel a bit more this season, I don't expect that type of dominance from this team. But I would say that if Nick Bosa is able to deal with this chip block issue that's currently happening and adjust to that, I think statistically speaking, it's not out of the question to assume that Bosa is going to have a better statistical year than he did in 2019. The line as a whole probably will not, certainly will not dominate the way that they did in 2019, but I do think it's fair to think Nick Bosa will have a statistically impressive season, even more than the one he had in 2019.
Yeah, I think he'll probably at least have a better statistic wise because he's going to be able to improve his craft and he's going to come back better than he was. But as far as like statistically, I think I look at the guy being a factor in our defense, help it, the defensive line a lot better. But how does Bosa, how does Bosa and D'Amico stop the chipping? That's the problem. He'll have to figure out the adjustments. Like he learns that the NFL is finding a lot of ways to stop good players. It's happened to a lot of great players like Aaron Donald. Some people do chipping on him also. So it's like you're gonna expect a lot of great players like his brother also is another good player. So of course you're gonna chip in or find a way to stop this guy from making plays.
Yeah, and it's not an easy fix. I mean, you saw both D'Amico Ryans and Nick Bosa come out and call it out as a problem to the NFL, which to me says we don't actually know how to really address this. So we're hoping that the league will make it illegal because it allows for blindside blocks, which they've attempted to eliminate in all other facets of the game. In this one instance, they seem to continue to allow it. So that's a fair point. But I think Bosa's the one thing that could improve is Bosa's comment about him just needing to get over the fact that he's being chipped and respond. That's particularly important, I would believe, this weekend against Seattle, in that once he's chipped, he cannot allow himself to be knocked out of the play, because the reality is Russell Wilson is going to extend a lot of those plays. So if he gets chipped and then feels he's out of the play and stops his momentum, stops the pursuit, but Russell is then breaking out on his side of the line, we're in for serious trouble. If he regains his composure, regains pursuit, he's going to be in a better position to tackle Wilson when he's trying to escape out of the pocket. So again, I think it's critical that Bosa addresses the issue in the way he suggested he needs to.
Yeah, that's probably the one thing he's going to have to work on because he's going to have to work on improving that way because they're going to be doing that all the time. So it's like one of those 50-50 calls. If they don't, sometimes they don't usually call it much on the linemen when they do that to the D line. So it's like sometimes you may get it, sometimes you don't. But as long as he works on that technique about avoiding those spots and try to be more better as a player, he's got the strength and he's got the ability, he's got the technique how to play because his dad played it and his brother does it. So it's like he's got a lot of years to play in this league, so he's going to get better in no time. So I think this is his breakout year where he finally comes back. But as far as like some people say, maybe comeback player of the year, I don't know. It's going to be tough between him and Dak Prescott. I think Prescott would probably be the one guy that would get the nod.
I think so. There's so much emotion involved in the Prescott one. That was such a gruesome injury. He's such a likable guy. He's on America's team. They were on Hard Knocks. It's set up too perfectly for him to get the comeback player of the year.
Yeah, and plus the stats he puts on too, and the numbers and the way he plays. So it's like people won't want to put him. Oh, Joe Burrow's another guy too, but yeah, it happens. But I think when it comes down to the argument, as much as I hate to say it, I think Dak Prescott would be the simplest comeback player of the year because they look at the statistics, they look at the performance, they look at the way they play, and you can't deny that. So it's like, sure, Joe Burrow was a rookie last year and he did get injured, but I don't think they're going to consider him right away. So it's like it's either going to
No,
be Prescott.
and Cincinnati's offense hasn't looked quite as spectacular as Dallas through this point of the season. Dallas being the number one offense in the league at this point, as measured at least by the number of first downs they're getting on a regular basis. They are putting up some great statistics, and the league is obsessed with offense. And so, if it's a close statistical matchup between Bosa's dominant defensive performance over the year versus Dak's dominant offensive performance over the year, when you consider those factors and the idea that Dak's injury was so gruesome, and so the human element, we want to root for someone who's coming back for something so gruesome. You saw it with Alex Smith. I think all those factors play into the idea that it will be very difficult for Nick Bosa to win that award over Dak Prescott.
Yeah, that's going to be the tough part. And as far as defensive player of the year, that's not out of the question. It depends on how he performs too. But I don't think comeback player of the year is in his conversation. So it's like if Bosa wants to really have a breakout year, maybe winning defensive player of the year is not a far fetch for him. All he has to do is produce and play at a high level. And I know a guy like Aaron Donald will probably get a lot of the votes, TJ Watt, and quite a few other players. But if Bosa keeps playing like he is, he could be in the argument for it. But comeback player of the year,
Absolutely. I mean, he's looking to rack up a 17 sack season if you play out the season as it is so far, right? Averaging 1 sack per game at this point with 3 sacks through 3 weeks. It's fair to wonder whether he'll be able to keep that up, in particular with two mobile quarterbacks coming up. It could be that we see a couple of sacks over the next 2 weeks. It could be that we get very little pressure. It'll be interesting to see how the wide nine fares and how much they're using it against the mobile quarterbacks and whether they adjust. Because that seemed to be one of the areas that fans were upset about, and rightfully so, in feeling like DeMeco Ryan didn't do much in adjusting to what the Packers were throwing at us last week. You have to think Pete Carroll saw that, is going to attempt to capitalize on it again this week. He's a very savvy coach. The question is, will DeMeco Ryans and the defense respond better this week than we did last week?
yeah, that will be the question. So, as far as like the final prediction of your score, like, do you want to do a prediction score of what you expect the Niners to play against Seattle, and then we
I'm
can probably just end the stream from here?
I am totally down with that, man. I see it as breaking out in the Niners' favor. And like I said earlier, I'm trying not to let the small 3 game sample size of what we've seen so far greatly impact my impression of this team. I still believe that the 49ers are a talented roster top to bottom. I think that they've had some trouble putting it all together to this point in the season, but I expect it to click at some point. I think that this matchup favors the 49ers as the Packers did last week. But this is the game I hope that the 49ers are able to get on track and to actually get right against this Seattle defense that is reeling at this point in time. So I look for big production from the big three, assuming that Kittle plays. I look for big production from Kittle, Debo, and Ayuk. And I think that we will have a more consistent rushing attack. You will see the same level of creativity, but more of the vanilla play calling to really, truly rack up yards rushing the ball. And I just think that Seattle's defense will struggle to get off the field as they have to this point in time. I don't think that that changes for them this week. So I predict that both teams will have a pretty easy time running the ball, moving the ball, putting up points. I've got the 49ers taking it 34-27.
Okay, 7 point game. That was the way I was looking at it too. Like, I think it's going to be a really close game. It's going to be very competitive. It's going to probably be one of those games where it could determine who gets the ball last and all that. So, I think, Corey, we already got to that part of the question, but I guess it is.
I
They
don't
don't
think
get
there
catch on those.
illegal at this point. I think the rules have sort of a loophole there where this is the last remaining blindside block that's allowed within the league. And I think it's fair for the 49ers to point it out with the hopes that the league addresses it, but they certainly won't do it mid-season. That would have to be an off-season move.
Yeah, off-season move is when they have to vote against having it there or removing it as a penalty or something like that. So, as far as all that, appreciate you on the show. It was great talking football. You were good on what you were saying on your points, and I kind of like exactly feel what you're saying. It's like this kind of game kind of seems like a Green Bay type of performance, but maybe this time we come away with the win. So I
I
say
sure hope
maybe we come
so.
away with yeah, I think maybe it comes down to the field goal, like I'm saying, because I don't want to get too ahead of the Seattle game because I know they're going to be really good. So I got a convincing factor that it will come down to 31 to 28 49ers. I mean, I just think that it can come down to the last second of the possession and we come away with a win. And I guess Gavin's calling you the legend, man. You're the shoe. I guess I got the right shoe on today.
Yes, yes, you did. And cheers to Gavin, my friend. I like you always.
Yeah, cheers to you, bro. I'm just drinking water.
Nice. Me too. Me too. Hey, it's early on Friday.
It's early on Friday, bro, but maybe in the near future, you can collaborate. We can debate football again, man. I've been keeping an eye on, been watching a lot of Grant Cohn every now and then, but I see you always pop in. I'm like, oh, okay, I like what he's saying. You know what you're talking about. I like to maybe I help you with a little bit of your followers too, and you do the same with me. So it's like,
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, it's great going on with Grant. We've got a regular show that we do Fridays at 11. I've been doing a regular midweek show, typically Wednesday afternoon at 4 has been my weekly live show. This week switched it back to Tuesday, but I'm trying to keep something midweek. And to answer Gavin's question about when the next live one is, I really want to bring in some lives over the weekend to do a setup to the game and then a reaction the next day where it's really just me going into the camera. So Gavin, look for that. Look for the shout out on Twitter, and I'll make sure to announce it before I go live for any of those unscheduled ones.
yeah, man, definitely looking forward to it. I'll check in, man. I always check you in with Conan. I see some of your videos pop in every now and then. So it's like you don't post like you post maybe like twice a week, right?
Yep. Yeah. Right now I'm
Yeah.
looking at about 2 shows a week, trying to get on other folks' shows to do, a couple of extra lives to get the face out there. But on the channel, look for more and more content coming. For sure, as I get more and more people in there, I want to do a live interaction show with comments, a live mailbag show. So Gavin, I'm going to need you for that one, bud.
Yeah, definitely, man. I'll definitely check out, man, because I mean I see your videos pop in every now and then with these analysts and all the other stuff. I've checked it out. I've give you comments every now, like just here and there.
Appreciate it,
Yeah,
CG.
yeah, appreciate it, man. But anytime I do like these other streams, you're more than welcome to jump into the stream with the rest of the guys. I get like a free hangout where everybody just debates football or whatever.
Nice. I definitely will. It was a pleasure being on today, man. I really appreciate you inviting me to your channel.
Yeah, no problem, man. I appreciate you taking the opportunity to collaborate, man. So looking forward to many more, maybe down the road, but I definitely will keep updates on what I see from your channel, bro. I like what I see
Nice.
so far.
Thanks, bro.
All right, man. Take it easy, bro.
Hey, you too.
All right.